All right, so let's get started. So welcome everyone. Christina and I are going to be your hosts today. We started this as a webinar, but it's really starting to feel like a TV show. So that's what we kind of like to roll with. So we're really happy to see you all today. And I feel really good that we have 53 people joining us for the webinar. So before we get started, I want to wish you all a happy National Volunteer Month and thank all the volunteers on the webinar today. Before we get started, I just want to do a brief plug about Volunteer West Virginia. So we do a lot of cool stuff in the state, but our two primary goals is to make volunteering easier for West Virginians, and we also oversee all the AmeriCorps programs in the state. So if you're an AmeriCorps member, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, and we want to thank you all as well for being volunteers during National Volunteer Month. So this is our Volunteer West Virginia webinar series. We started this year, and the reason why we did it is to introduce what we do at Volunteer West Virginia, and then just have some fun networking opportunities and spotlight different programs throughout the state. So we started this webinar series in January, and then we're already in April. And just to fill you in a little bit about our upcoming topics, we are having a grant writing training in May. This is one of our most popular topics at Volunteer West Virginia. So we're offering a free version, a smaller version of our grant writing training. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up for it. And then in June, it's West Virginia Day. So we're going to do some fun networking activities. We're going to do Meet Your Wild and Wonderful West Virginia Neighbors on June 9th. And then on the 11th, we're going to be introducing the Volunteer West Virginia staff. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what we do at Volunteer West Virginia, that would be a really great opportunity to put a name to a face, or a face to a name. So today's topic is all about volunteering for National Volunteer Month. We're going to be doing a few little features during this webinar. So we're going to start with some volunteer spotlights, and then we're going to share our top volunteer tips with you all. If we have any nonprofits or agencies that work with volunteers, here's some tips for you that might be helpful, and then just tips for volunteers in general. And then we're going to close it out by interviewing 3 of my most favorite volunteer programs in the state. So that's how we're going to close. So we have a pretty fun program put together for today. So before we get started, when you register for this webinar, you had the opportunity to share your volunteer story, and then we're sending everyone who did that a free Be Kind Volunteer West Virginia baseball cap. So if you haven't done that, be sure to register before you leave. And then we just wanted to share some of these amazing stories that we've collected while organizing this webinar. So we're going to share 3 volunteer stories now. So our first volunteer is Marilyn Whitback from Charleston. She's actually on the webinar today. So Marilyn, be sure to say hi in the chat box. Marilyn's story really touched our heart. So Marilyn volunteers all throughout Charleston, and she also volunteers at the Hubbard House in Charleston. And when she was volunteering there, she was reading to a patient that could no longer read. So Marilyn went to the Culture Center to get equipment so this patient could listen to books. And then through Marilyn's help, this patient was able to read books in hospice. And when this patient passed away, unfortunately, Marilyn went back to the Culture Center, and she asked the library for the blind if there was any way she could help. And then Marilyn spent several years reading books there and recording them. So she would read books and magazines. And she said she really enjoyed this volunteer experience because she loved the people at the library and she learned lots about West Virginia. So that was a really unique volunteer story. And I want to thank Marilyn for her volunteer service and for making West Virginia a better place. And then next up, we have Joseph Wakeham. He is a LifeBridge AmeriCorps member. So I know we have a lot of LifeBridge AmeriCorps staff on the webinar today. He has a really cool volunteer position. He's an AmeriCorps member, so he serves for 1 year. and he serves at the United Way of Monongalia in Preston County. And while he's there, he answers 211 calls. And 211 is so important. It's a free directory you can call if you need help paying your utility bills or making an appointment for a COVID vaccine. They can help you with just about everything. So when you call 211, Joseph is one of the volunteers that answers the phone, and he recently helped a client keep their house from getting repossessed. So he saved someone's home. So that's really cool. And we wanted to share Joseph's story and thank him so much for his AmeriCorps service and for helping so many people in West Virginia. And there's lots of really nice comments in the chat if you have a second to check it out. So thank you, Joseph. And then lastly, I love this story. We have Jennifer Ballad. She is from Hansford, and she has been volunteering for 10 years, cleaning up the same stretch of road in Paint Creek. And then along the way, she's gotten her neighbors involved, and she helps start community beautification programs. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's a picture of a sign Jennifer helped to build. And then she even paints over graffiti. So you can see in the middle, the before and after. So we were really touched by Jennifer's story and her dedication. And we wanted to thank Jennifer and all the volunteers that continue to serve in West Virginia and all the good work that you're doing. So thank you so much. So now I'm going to pass it on to Christina. She's going to be sharing a few tips about why you should volunteer and how to have a really good volunteer experience.
Thanks, Dana. Hey, everyone. Good to see everybody here on the line. I am excited to talk to you guys about why you should volunteer. Everyone has different motivations for volunteering, and that's totally okay. And that's what makes a network of volunteers so diverse and so wonderful. We wanted to share our top 5 reasons to volunteer. I bet that, well, I'd be willing to bet that most everyone on the call today is already volunteering in some capacity, whether you consider yourself a volunteer or not. But whether you're looking for a reason to start volunteering or you're trying to convince someone else in your life to start volunteering, we have some good tips and reasons to volunteer. I also wanted to share some photos that we've pulled out of our archives from the last couple of years of volunteers across West Virginia. Shown here, we have some student volunteers from West Virginia Wesleyan participating in Buchanan's Community and Kindness Day of Service. They were doing a yard cleanup. And we also have some students at Hinton Elementary showing off some Be Kind stickers. Many of you all might know that Volunteer West Virginia has this Be Kind campaign, which is meant to promote kindness and volunteerism across the state. So, our top 5 reasons to volunteer. Like I said, there's a lot of good reasons. It was hard to narrow this down, but here are some that we thought might be of particular interest to you all. So for the first one, volunteers actually live longer and are healthier. This might not be a surprise, but it's been found that especially later in life, volunteering is more beneficial for your health than even eating well and exercising, which is pretty crazy. But it makes sense, right? Older people who volunteer might remain, more physically active, more physically fit, and their psychological well-being is probably better as well. So the health benefits from volunteering come from, establishing meaningful volunteer roles before retirement and keeping you active through your post-retirement years. So that is some motivation to start volunteering early and keep volunteering throughout your life. The next top reason we wanted to share with you guys is that volunteering establishes strong relationships. I saw the chat box flooding with your favorite reasons to volunteer when we were first joining the meeting, and a lot of you guys said it was because you got to meet people and you were connecting with other people, and that is a huge reason why people begin to volunteer. Maybe you've moved to a new area and you want to meet some good people, and it's a reason that people continue to volunteer. It's because they're friends with the people they're volunteering with. Working alongside people that value the same things that you do really can help you develop a strong relationship with them. And not only can it help you develop strong relationships with new people. It can also strengthen bonds you already have. So volunteering with your family members or maybe friends you already have can kind of solidify your shared values. Next, volunteering is good for your career, and I can personally attest to this one. Statistically speaking, people that volunteer actually make more money than those that don't volunteer, which is kind of surprising, but it makes sense because it's partially related to the relationships that people create while they're volunteering. There's research about these things called weak ties, which are social connections that you make outside of your close-knit social circle, like friends and family. And so the more of these weak ties you have, the more you can learn about opportunities in the community and new information, job opportunities, references, all those different types of things. So volunteering is a great way to create new networking connections. Of course, volunteering is good for society and good for the community as a whole. So as you all know, so many organizations and programs rely on the work of volunteers to continue serving our neighbors. And when resources are scarce, volunteers really step up to meet the needs of people, especially in West Virginia. And last but not least, volunteering can give you a sense of purpose. So of course, we're all walking through life looking for our purpose, and being fulfilled through volunteering can lead to those positive health outcomes that I mentioned earlier, as well as, resonating with you and igniting the passion. It can really make you happier in all other areas of your life. So those were our top 5 reasons to volunteer. Now we're going to touch a little bit on the best effective volunteer qualities. Like I said, everyone volunteers for different reasons, but we want you guys to be the best volunteers that you can be. And part of that is being the best you that you can be. Here we have some photos from our LifeBridge AmeriCorps members, shout out LifeBridge, and some other folks from the United Way of Central West Virginia assisting with a mobile food pantry in Clay County. Just absolutely beautiful scenery there in Clay County. Different volunteer roles require different skills. So of course, some volunteer roles might require accountant qualities or working with youth qualities, but there are a few important qualities that are important across the board. One of them is flexibility. If I have any volunteer managers on the line, which I know that I do, you know that being flexible is incredibly important for volunteers. If you're willing to jump in and help with different tasks that the organization needs, number one, you're more likely to open up doors for yourself and new experiences for yourself, but you're also helping the organization accomplish their goals. And flexibility is something that can help you in almost every aspect of your life. So as you're volunteering, remember to stay flexible. Second thing we wanted to touch on is your attitude. We all have bad days. We know this, but it's important to remember that your energy, your vibe, and your attitude while you're volunteering, actually, it reflects on the organization that you're volunteering for. And always remember that. Energy is contagious. So if you're really passionate and positive about the project that you're working on, other people will start to feel the same way. And the opposite is true too. So if you're feeling really negative and defeated and not excited, people will pick up on that, and they probably won't feel as called to help with the cause. The third thing that makes a great volunteer is being committed, doing what you say you're going to do. As a former volunteer manager myself, I remember the feeling of dread I would get when people would text me 30 minutes beforehand, letting me know something came up and they weren't going to be there. And of course, things happen, totally get that. But remaining consistent with your volunteer responsibilities is really important. So if you do have a scheduling conflict or, something has come up that you can't fulfill your role, it's a really good practice to let your volunteer coordinator know as soon as possible so they can start to find a replacement or make other arrangements. And volunteer managers, it's also important that you make it easy for volunteers to communicate that with you, right? So be available to them and check in with them, confirm with volunteers. Sometimes people just forget. and you might find that out a little bit too late. So try to confirm your volunteer role about a week in advance if possible. The best volunteers are really connected to your why, your motivation for volunteering. So you chose a volunteer role for a reason. Remember what your passion for that, and try to stay connected to that. When times are tough, remembering why you decided to volunteer in the first place can really help you stay the course and stay connected to the goals that you're hoping to accomplish. One example for myself is I foster puppies for the local Humane Society. And it's really hard sometimes to remember why I do that when they're chewing up my shoes or they're using the bathroom on my carpet. My entire house is carpet. It can be difficult sometimes, but then when I see them get adopted or I see them become healthy, it's a lot easier for me to like reconnect to that reason of why I am fostering puppies. And again, last but not least, another really important quality for volunteers is to be a team player. Most volunteer roles are going to require you to work with either the public in some way or other team members of your volunteer team. So just make sure that you're open to that. That includes people that are different than you, people who may have different backgrounds than you, people you might not see eye to eye with. So be sure that you are being a good team player. And we also wanted to throw in some tips for our organizations or people who manage volunteers about how to improve volunteer experience. Here we have the Greenbrier Long-Term Recovery Committee assisting with flood recovery in 2018. We wanted to put some archived photos in here for you guys so that you would know these are not recent photos during the pandemic. So these were volunteers after the flooding in 2016 in Greenbrier County. Just some quick tips for volunteer managers to create the best possible experience for your volunteers. I kind of already touched upon this, but communicate effectively and frequently. That might look like a newsletter or a social media group on Facebook where volunteers can get updates. You can even use like automated text messages to remind people, or you could even call them on the phone. Sometimes the power of a phone call is really something you want to leverage to communicate with your volunteers. The next tip we have is to use your volunteer insights and their experience, ask them for their feedback and actually use that feedback. Ask how they found the volunteer opportunity, what motivated them to respond to the need, and ask if they plan to volunteer again. This can help you understand your volunteers and help you improve upon your program. Another tip is to offer volunteer incentives. Now, this doesn't mean money. This doesn't necessarily mean gifts. An incentive can be a proof of their impact, a certificate, thanking them for their service. It can be professional development, like trainings, first aid training, different things like that. Make it known that you want to be there for your volunteers and you can serve a reference for them or whatever in the future. You also want to create a social environment for your volunteers to connect with each other so they can form those bonds and they want to keep volunteering. And this one might seem obvious, but sometimes it goes overlooked. Say thank you to your volunteers. It's really easy, but when people feel appreciated, they're so much more likely to keep coming back. So you can literally just say thank you. You can send them a note in the mail or an email or a text message. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but people like to feel good. People like to feel appreciated. So if you make them feel good about their service, they are more likely to continue to serve with you. I'll pass it back to you, Dana, for our volunteer program spotlights.
Awesome hearing all your tips. And if you're a volunteer manager on a call day, we are organizing a rural volunteer management training right now. And we're going to be offering that at the end of this year or early next year. So if your organization would like more tips and tangible strategies for organizing your volunteer program, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. We'll be sending announcements. So And I really love watching the chat box. There's been some really interesting comments, and there's even different organizations mentioning their volunteer program. So if you're on the call and you have a volunteer program, feel free to drop that information in the chat, and you might get connected with a new volunteer. So,
Hey Dana, your sound is coming through a little bit weird. So do you want to mute yourself and then unmute and see if that'll fix it?
Does that sound better?
No, you sound like a robot. I don't know how to explain it.
You're a robot? Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Sorry about the technical difficulties, guys, but you know how things go in this digital age. Things don't always work out how you expect them to.
Okay, do I sound better now?
No. Do you want to try to leave the meeting and then come back really quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'll be back.
Oh, you're good.
Did I get it?
Yes. Okay. Dana's back, everyone.
It's a miracle. I promise you all, I'm a real person. I'm not a robot. I'm sorry I've been talking like that for so long, but we're excited to roll into our next part of the webinar, which is a volunteer program spotlight. So I have 3 of my most favorite volunteer programs on the line today. And the first one is Faith in Action of the Greater Kanawha Valley. They help seniors stay in their homes, and they have a really well-organized volunteer program. And I'm really excited to have Jennifer Wagner on the call today. And she's going to be explaining to us how Faith in Action is helping seniors in the Kanawha Valley. So Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, good. So Jennifer, I love sharing about Faith in Action. Can you tell us a little bit about your program and how volunteers help?
Sure. So we are a volunteer organization that provides free services to our older neighbors age 60 and over in Kanawha and Putnam counties. Our volunteers assist with things like transportation to medical appointments of any kind. It can be an eye appointment, dental appointment, whatever the case may be. We also provide grocery shopping assistance, and we do that in a multitude of ways. We can either pick up a click list order, we can take them shopping, we can go shopping for them, we can place their order online, just a whole host of different ways we can assist with that. We also have a Reassurance calls program where we match phone friends together, and it's one of the ways that we work to try to mitigate some of the loneliness and isolation out there that many of our seniors feel and encounter on a daily basis. And then lastly, for our core services, we have the Honeydew Cruise, which is a group of volunteers that performs minor home repairs and maintenance projects for folks with an eye towards safety, keeping them safe in their home environment. So we do a lot of grab bars, a lot of handrails, fix a lot of broken doors and replace locks and things of that nature. So small things, but meaningful things that help keep them safe in their homes.
So what I love about Jennifer's volunteer program is if you have just an hour a week, you can call people on the phone and do wellness checks. Or if you want to volunteer long-term, you can join the Honeydew crew and help repair homes. So they're really accommodating for the amount of times that volunteers want to share. Jennifer, I'm sure you've been very busy during COVID. How has your volunteer program changed?
Well, it's been interesting for us because we never closed our doors. We have been serving right on through. It became evident to us very early on in the pandemic when the shutdown started to happen that our seniors were going to be particularly vulnerable because the access to groceries and supplies was going to be a big problem. So that empowered us, or made us think about ways outside the box that we could mitigate that problem and help seniors maintain access to nutritious food and to the supplies that they needed. And that's really where we came up with the whole shop and drop effort that we do, which is the taking the orders over the phone, placing orders online, picking it up and delivering it for them, where it was completely contactless, but it was a way our volunteers could stay engaged and they could still serve with little risk and to do something meaningful and powerful for people. And other programs evolved too. After a couple of months, we realized, that the seniors that we serve are a lot of them are very isolated already, as I've mentioned. And that is again a recurring theme in this conversation, and because it's something that I have a heavy focus on right at the moment. But we decided to develop a series of contactless drop-off of goodies. So we started this porch package program. We did, the first one was just a little goodie bag with puzzles and snacks and things like puzzle books and things like that. And the volunteer would just call and say, I'm on my way, I have a little something for you. And they would drop it off on the porch. They could wave and chat on the phone a little bit. And it was just a way to connect and make sure that they knew someone was out here thinking about them and caring about them, and reminding them that we were here. One month we did fresh vegetables from some of our volunteers are gardeners, and they gave us tomatoes and green peppers and things like that, and we put together little baskets and made deliveries of those. And we delivered Thanksgiving dinners, we delivered Easter dinners, so just a whole host of things. And that was a program that proved so popular that we will probably continue that and expand it as COVID goes away, as COVID becomes less of a concern, and we're able to have some face-to-face visits again. We hope to evolve that into a full-on visitation program where we can have some friendly visits and things like that. So we're excited about that.
I love how you were able to pivot and make your program work even in the face of COVID. And I can't imagine how some of those seniors would have gotten their groceries otherwise, and how much it would have meant to them to have a package on their front porch after being home alone for 3 months, a year. It seems so important.
And it seems so simple. I mean, when I talk about it, I mean, how hard is it to go pick up groceries for somebody? But coordinating that and finding out who has the real need and how we can best address that, and what volunteers feel safe and comfortable doing those sorts of services. It took a lot of effort, but it was well worth it, because I know how much of an impact it had on the people that we serve.
Yeah, I believe it. You do such a wonderful job organizing your volunteers, and I'm sure you have a favorite story or two. What's one of your favorite volunteer programs?
We have about 200 volunteers, and there's a lot of volunteer stories that I can tell. But my favorite one I keep coming back to is kind of a full circle story. So we had a lady who applied for services for her husband who was ill. And she's a small woman, and her husband is very tall, large man, had a stroke. And so she was looking for assistance getting him to doctor's appointments and things. So she filled out an application. I went and visited her to do the intake visit and the whole bit. Never heard from her. So a couple of weeks later, I called and said, just wanted to check in with you, see how things are going. And she said, well, the reason you haven't heard from me is because my husband passed away unexpectedly in his sleep. And so I haven't needed to call you for appointments or anything. And I extended my sympathy and told her, call if she ever needed anything. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, she called me back and she said, I used to volunteer my whole life. And she said, I love what you're doing and I really want to be part of it. How can I help? And I said, do you enjoy talking on the phone? And she said, yes, I do. I love talking on the phone. So I matched her up with another woman. And she went from being a care receiver to being a volunteer, and became a phone volunteer. A few months later, she ended up with 12 women that she was calling, and it's her job. I mean, it is her purpose, and she loves it, and she is so fulfilled by it, and she takes it very seriously. She has become very close to these women through the year. She goes and visits them on their birthday, things like that. She keeps me posted when somebody's about to have a new great grandbaby, or somebody went to the hospital or something like that. So it keeps me connected to the people that we serve as well. And she's just wonderful. And fast forward about a year, we do an annual survey of all of our care receivers to how are we doing, how what can we do better, how what is your interaction with the volunteers, et cetera. I got a phone call one day from a lady named Ava, and she said, I got this paper from you guys, and I don't even know who you people are. And I said, oh, Ava, I'm so sorry. I said, I thought Patty Atkins was calling you once a week. And she said, yeah. Well, she said, well, Patty calls me, but she's just my friend. And I said, you know what? You can just throw that survey right in the trash, because I just got everything I needed from that one that you just made. So that's my favorite full circle kind of volunteer story, and that we have a million of them, but that's my favorite.
Oh, I love that, Jennifer. That story really touches my heart. And I love that she said that she's her friend, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And if whether you're volunteering or you're looking for volunteers, I realize at the end of the day, they're just your friends. A volunteer isn't a magical unicorn. It's just really a friend, and it's someone helping others. And that's why we love to tell people just to be kind, because it doesn't have to be as formal as a volunteer. You're just helping someone out and being a friend.
And I can add to that the most important page in our volunteer manual, and the most important 2 minutes, 3 minutes of my volunteer training I do with our volunteers, is called "It's All About the Visit." And really, at the end of the day, the message that I try to impart on all of the people who go through our training is that whether you're providing a ride to somebody, or picking up groceries for somebody, or making a phone call, the service you're providing is really almost irrelevant. It's that connection that you're making with that person, and that caring and that compassion that you're showing them, that they are important in that moment, that they matter, and that they're not an inconvenience, and you're not doing something because it's a big favor. You're doing it because you care and because you want to. And that's what I try to impress upon and impart to everybody who becomes part of our volunteer program.
Yeah, and I think that's why you have such a successful program with 200 volunteers. If you have anyone on the line that's wondering, how were you able to get 200 volunteers in your organization? What's like a quick tip?
Well, I think the easy answer to that is that we have so many different opportunities. So, not all 200 volunteers drive. We might have, 60 people who like to drive and provide transportation. We have another 30 people who enjoy the grocery shopping bit and part of it. We have another, however many who make the phone calls, and we have others who like to do honeydew projects. So everybody has their thing that they enjoy doing. So the fact that we are so flexible in the opportunities that we offer, and you can do whatever you choose to do, whatever fits your schedule. You don't have to be somewhere every Tuesday at 10. You sign up for what you can do when you can do it. So that it's all, if you're going on vacation for 3 months to Florida, then you just don't sign up, right? There's no obligation in that way. And it just works. It works for people. It works for their schedules. And they like the variety, and they like the flexibility. And I think that that's really been the reason for the success in building the program.
Yeah, you touched on that really well. It seems like flexibility is a big part in meeting people where they're at and how they want to help. So I love that. So I wanted to ask you, COVID has really pointed out how social isolation and loneliness is a big challenge for seniors. So this has always been a challenge, but I think the past year really put it into context. And you have a dream of starting a social engagement program for seniors. Can you tell us a little bit about your dream and just how you see that playing out?
Well, it's been on my mind and on my heart for almost as long as since I started this program 7 years ago. And it's such a health crisis. The loneliness and the social isolation is such a critical health crisis with our older population. There's got to be something we can do. Just a couple decades ago, every senior used to be able to rely on about a 24-person support network, whether it was extended family, friends, neighbors, whatever the case may be. Today, that number is down to less than 2. Their families are smaller, families are moving away, people are more transient than they used to be, neighbors move away. We have a lot of our seniors who don't see their families. Their families live out of states. They don't know their neighbors anymore. They can't go to church anymore, so they've lost touch with that connection, and they're just truly isolated. They can have a street full of neighbors and still be alone and still be lonely. And we just have been doing research for a lot of years about ways that we can address this. And one of the things that we are finally embarking on at some point this year is an intergenerational program of matching some of our young volunteers ages 16 to 25 with a senior, where they can assist them with sorting through their mail, or just paying a visit a couple of times a month, helping them set up a Facebook page, or figure out how to send a text message on their phone, or those sorts of things. So there's a whole host of things that they can do just to keep company with that senior and make a connection there. One of the things is the Adopt a Lawn program. They can adopt a senior's lawn for the summer and keep it mowed every 2 or 3 weeks. throughout the summer, so that it looks like somebody lives in their house and there's not, their seniors not having to pay $50 for somebody to mow the grass when they are on a fixed income and can't afford it. So there's just a whole variety of things that we have in the works. So how we're going to make this work. The hard part comes when starting to recruit the volunteers to get to commit to this program. So our goal is to try to identify 25 volunteers this year for this program and to launch it this summer. And that's really our hope.
That seems like a totally doable goal. And if anyone can do it, I know you can, Jennifer.
If you have any youth in the Kanawha Valley that need to get away from the video games for a minute, the hot minute, send them my way. We can take care of them.
That's a great plug. Yeah. So if you have any youth members in Kanawha County that would like to get paired with a senior, let Jennifer know. And I mean, I think if we all just take a moment and reflect on something we've learned from a senior, your grandma or your grandpa, you're amazed at how much you learned. And I think it's really cool that you want to pass that on and make seniors feel loved.
On the flip side of that, both my kids live out of state now. And so, one of these days I'm going to need this kind of help. I feel like I bring that perspective to it too. I mean, I want somebody to be there if my mom needs help. I want somebody to be there if I need help. And I want my kids to understand the importance of taking care of each other and caring for your neighbors. And, it all comes back to the golden rule then at the end of the day. So that's kind of where we build everything from, just taking care of each other.
Exactly. And that's something West Virginians are really good at. So I'm glad you're tapping into that, Jennifer. So before we part, if someone's interested in volunteering with Faith in Action of the Greater Kanawha Valley, how can they get connected?
So you can reach out to me directly at jennifer@faithinactiongkv.com. It's up there on the screen, any of those ways. We do actually have a virtual training coming up next Wednesday at 11:30. If anybody's interested, you can hit us on our Facebook page and we can send you the information on how to get involved. We would love to have you. We would love to give you more information. Just reach out and we're always here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer, and thanks for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it so much.
We'll see you later. So we're going to leave Jennifer's contact information up for one more second. Before we go on, I have to ask you all something. Did I sound like a robot the entire beginning of the presentation?
No, it started randomly after I went. You'll hear it on the recording and you'll laugh.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that you all could hear the volunteer spotlights with Joseph and Marilyn and Jennifer, because I didn't want you all to miss that. So I'm glad. Phew. All right, so next up we have a wonderful volunteer organization. This is a statewide organization if you're interested in helping. And this is West Virginia Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. We know them lovingly as West Virginia VOAD. You might remember the 2016 flood. VOAD helped to organize volunteers to build hundreds of houses in the flood affected areas, and they do so much. And Kathy has been working so hard to organize volunteers to help with the COVID vaccination clinics. So I wanted to invite Kathy on the show today to share a little bit about how they're helping with the vaccination clinic and just a little bit more about West Virginia VOAD. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Dana, for having me. This has been a great program so far.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. We are really happy to share about VOAD. So if there's someone on the call who hasn't heard of VOAD, can you just explain a little bit about what you do there?
Sure. Well, West Virginia VOAD is a volunteer-driven organization, and you said our full name. The word voluntary begins our name, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. So actually what West Virginia VOAD is an umbrella organization of members who also depend on volunteers. And our purpose primarily is to spearhead disaster response and recovery in the state of West Virginia, which normally looks like a flood or a weather-related event. In 2020 and 2021, it looks like COVID-19, a pandemic.
That is such a good description. So, Kathy, why do you think in disaster volunteers are so important? Why is it such an important role for volunteers?
Well, it's a very important role for volunteers. For one thing, West Virginia VOAD is actually written into the state's emergency operations plan, and we have specific responsibilities that include volunteer deployment, mass care, sheltering, mass feeding, that type of thing. And so when disaster strikes the Mountain State and we are called into action, we're expected to deploy as soon as we possibly can. Of course, we depend upon volunteers for that. Our first go-to is our member organizations, which includes Volunteer West Virginia. It also includes organizations like the United Methodist, the Salvation Army, the American Red Cross, and many, many more. And this, will not try to give an exhaustive list, but all of these organizations are critical. And our role in deploying them is really to provide that coordination that keeps people from stumbling over each other, that keeps us from duplicating effort in different areas. Other reasons why volunteering in disaster times is so important in West Virginia is, number one, we have a lot of disasters. Our topography, our climate lends itself to flooding, to severe weather events. We're just coming out of an ice storm and some flooding. 18 counties were declared states of emergency just a few weeks ago in the state. And also, West Virginia is traditionally made up of vulnerable populations. We're an aging state. We're, I believe, the third oldest state in the country. We have a high rate of disease. We have a high rate of poverty. And what that translates to sometimes is populations that cannot necessarily recover themselves, and they need assistance from their fellow mountaineers to get that job done.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I want to talk a little bit about how you've been helping during COVID. But just before, I don't want to miss this opportunity to spotlight what a huge impact your organization made during the 2016 flood. Can you just briefly share how long you've been working on this project and how many homes you've helped to repair after this huge flood?
Wow. Well, that was, a historic event in the state. Named the 1,000-year flood. It impacted more than 12 counties. 12 counties were part of the disaster declaration. And at that time, people that were experts in the disaster recovery field said, we're looking at a 5 to 7 year recovery, which was shocking to most people because, we as West Virginians, we're used to kind of hitting the ground running and putting things back together as quickly as we can. But that response effort through West Virginia VOAD began immediately within hours to days after that event, and it still continues to this day. West Virginia VOAD is running 3 different federal grants through the State Commerce Department and Rise West Virginia to provide case management, house building, and replacement of private bridges. Prior to the Rise grant coming into the state, West Virginia VOAD and its voluntary organizations recovered over 2,300 families. And when I say recovered, that's anything from a minor repair and furniture replacement to full rebuilds. And so I believe the value of service for what was done through donated dollars and volunteers was about $42 million.
Wow.
In addition to the FEMA money that came into the state.
That is an amazing accomplishment made possible by volunteers and all your hard work.
Volunteers, that's right.
And to me, it's mind-boggling to think about that the flood recovery is still happening. And
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So I didn't want to go without mentioning that, but now I want to talk about how you've been helping with these COVID vaccination clinics and what roles volunteers have been playing in that, because I know you've been really busy with that the past few weeks.
Absolutely, and that has really ramped up. But if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the beginning of 2020, when the pandemic became known as a pandemic, and West Virginia VOAD jumped on board immediately at that point. And the kinds of things that we did initially were to support other nonprofits around the state with PPE acquisition. Many nonprofits, especially those that whose missions involve domestic violence, child care, senior citizens, those experiencing homelessness and other vulnerable populations. You know, this wasn't in anybody's budget that we had to change our way of supplying and creating a safe work environment. So that's one of the things that VOAD was able to do, was acquire and disperse PPE around the state. We also, you know, immediately the homeless population lost their congregate shelters, their overnight shelters and their day shelters. And so we were able to bring in shower trailers and supplies to help transition them into a different way of life temporarily. We were able to support food banks and food pantries, and have even started doing a supplemental food distribution with foods that FEMA has sent through West Virginia VOAD, and we've used volunteers to get that out to food pantries all over the state. So as vaccination clinics became the main focus, our efforts shifted. All of that other is still going on with other people at the helm and volunteer support with that. But the big push since January, end of January, has been staffing vaccination clinics all over the state. So that's been very interesting.
Wow. And that was really interesting to hear how you helped in the beginning and now you're helping now, because it's a continuous process.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up our conversation?
So, yes, we need volunteers. We can always use volunteers. So we're staffing COVID clinics regularly on a weekly basis. Volunteers can go to our website at wvvoad.org, and there's a volunteer application. That's one of the first thing that pops up. But I do want to take this opportunity to bring to people's attention, I mentioned the flooding that happened just a few weeks ago. We're in hopes that there will be some kind of a declaration for individual assistance, but we don't know. But what we do know is there are 356 homes that were affected that are going to need assistance in being put back together. So folks that would like to volunteer through West Virginia VOAD, start with your local, our member organizations, which could be as simple as your local church, which is part of the Council of Churches, which is one of our stronger partners. So there are all kinds of ways to get on board with what we're doing. We would love to have you. It's disaster volunteering is a whole different ball game. You either love it or you don't at all. So come and give it a try.
That's awesome. Well, Kathy, we really appreciate you coming and joining us today. I know how busy you are, and like Kathy said, they need volunteers with flood recovery right now and to help with COVID vaccination clinics. So here's Kathy's contact information. I'm sure she would love to hear from you. And if you're affiliated with churches or a Rotary Club in your town, this would be a great opportunity to rally your volunteers, get back together, and make a big impact after a really challenging year. So thank you so much, Kathy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
See you later. So that was awesome. We have one more volunteer program to spotlight. This is a new program to me, but Christina has volunteered with them, and they are doing so much to help Southern West Virginia stay active. So I'm really happy to have India Krosick on the line today, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about Active Southern West Virginia. So hi, India.
Hello. Thank you so much today.
You're welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about how volunteers help and what you do at Active Southern West Virginia?
Yeah, so Active Southern West Virginia is a nonprofit organization in Southern West Virginia, and our mission is to increase opportunities for physical activity throughout the region. So we want to break down barriers that people face to be physically active, such as, cost, time, location, things like that. So we want to provide different opportunities for people to be active as a way of increasing the economic viability of the area. A healthier workforce equals a healthier community, and workplaces or employers might want to come to the region to spur some economic development. Our program areas are kids run clubs. We have community captains who lead volunteer like hikes, walks, dog walking groups, yoga, tai chi, things like that. We have a workplace wellness program designed to get people in workplaces, active throughout the day. And we also have Bike Walk Southern West Virginia, which focuses on like complete streets policies and other ways to get communities more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. And all these program areas are led by volunteers. So our organization truly runs on the energy of volunteers to keep the wheels turning, keep these opportunities available for people to take advantage of.
That's awesome. So what I love about this program is you all train volunteers to be active community coaches. So if you are a yoga teacher or a basketball coach, or you love hiking, you can be a volunteer and then lead these community programs, right, India? Does that sound about correct?
Yes, exactly. And so we like refit is a good example, which is kind of a dance aerobics type thing. We'll even pay for refit certifications that people can, and then, we'll pay for the certification, then people can become a teacher or an instructor and, offer that to the community for free.
Yeah, and now that it's warming up, we're moving into spring and going into summer, and more people are getting vaccinated. You have a lot of different volunteer opportunities. Can you share a little bit about what you have planned for the rest of the year?
Yes, definitely. So we always need volunteers. There's always stuff to do. So we'll just kind of go down the list of a few things that we do have going on in each program area. So first thing is youth programming, our kids run clubs. Right now we're looking for some youth swim coaches. We'd like to start a swim club at the Fayette County pool this summer. So swim coaches, feel free to reach out to Active. We also are doing a youth summer camp. It'll be 2 one-week sessions. And for that summer camp, we're looking for some volunteers to help kind of facilitate that. We're also hiring for a couple paid positions for that summer camp as well. So that's a great way to get involved if you're interested in youth programming, kind of being outside and helping facilitate that sort of thing. We're also doing an Adventure Day series throughout the summer with some other organizations, which is where we go to different locations and offer different things to the community. Active Southern West Virginia typically brings a youth obstacle course that we kind of set up. Kids can kind of run through that while their parents are doing something else. There's also maybe a painting station or some other craft. So Active and some other organizations come together for this Adventure Day series, and we're looking for volunteers to help kind of facilitate our portion, like I said, the agility course or other activity we have going on. And then finally, we're always looking for volunteers for our after-school kids run clubs. So kids run clubs are our kind of main youth programming initiative. Kids run clubs are volunteer-led, obviously, free after-school programs for kids where they just kind of learn to run, build their confidence in physical activity, and just really taking a focus on giving them an opportunity, a free opportunity after school to be active in kind of a safe environment. So just again, removing those barriers and give the kids a chance to be active. So like I said, looking for coaches to help facilitate those. And we do all the training. There's no need to have any prior experience or anything like that. And again, it's all offered for free of charge to the kids, etc. Some other opportunities we're looking for are some community captain volunteers to help with hiking clubs, things like that. So we do have a partnership with the National Park, which enables us to kind of go out in the parks in larger groups and lead guided hikes. Sometimes we even have park rangers come along as kind of an interpretive element, so they can kind of explain things about the region, things like that, which is a lot of fun. We're also looking for some volunteers to lead the Walk with Ease program. If anybody's familiar, it's a walking program to help people manage arthritis, but it's also, great for people who don't have that or who don't have arthritis, just general kind of walking program. So we're kind of expanding opportunities for people to offer that. Again, with all these things, Active Southern West Virginia does all the training and pays for all the training that's associated with it. So there's no cost for the volunteer to kind of get involved. Another community captain opportunity is we're always looking for refit coaches. Another one where you can get a certification that Active pays for, and then you just have to offer that program for free. to kind of reciprocate or, in exchange for the certification. We have a certain amount of money designated for specifically refit volunteers or refit, certifications to volunteer. So we're hoping to get a few more of those to kind of use up that funding. And in Boone and Kanawha County specifically, we're looking for some volunteers to lead any program that they might want to. And this will help with a particular grant that we're working on as well. And just a couple other volunteer opportunities, workplace wellness. If anybody's interested in kind of getting involved with increasing activity in the workplace or focusing on workplace wellness, we're looking for employees to take part in a May Work It Health training, as well as employees who want to be walk with ease leaders. So again, that's an additional training that Active pays for, and you can just offer it to people in your workplace or people in the community, either one. And finally, our New River Gorge Rim to Rim 10K race is coming up in May, and that is our inaugural 10K, so 6 miles. It's through the New River Gorge, so it'll be a lot of fun. But we're looking for some kind of course marshal volunteers to help kind of direct, the flow of participants, help with, end of race things like that. So we have a lot of options there for volunteers that we need currently.
I love it. It sounds like you make volunteering so much fun. So there are all kinds of volunteer opportunities if you live in the southern portion of the state to get active and go see your neighbors and enjoy the beautiful state. And we're going to run just about maybe 5 minutes over. I'm going to ask India her last question, but if you're able to stay on the line, you're not going to want to miss this because it's really cool. So India actually found her job by volunteering, which is an unexpected volunteer benefit, is that you can find a job in your community. So India was an AmeriCorps Vista with Southern West Virginia before she got this position. Can you just briefly tell us how you found your job and how that worked out?
Yeah, definitely. So it was kind of accidental. I mean, I was living, I'm actually from Massachusetts. My grandparents live down here in West Virginia, so I've been looking for a way to kind of move to the area to be closer to them and closer to some other families. So I was just browsing, job listings on AmeriCorps.com, or I forget the exact website for where you can find listings. But and yeah, I was interested in something to do with activity and kind of community building and, physical activity, and found this opportunity. And luckily enough, they hired me as an AmeriCorps Vista. So I was a Vista for 2 years. And then after that, they were kind enough to hire me on as a full employee. So now I'm in my 3rd year with Active Southern West Virginia, and it's directly because of my, Vista service. And I've just really enjoyed kind of helping out and learning about this community and being around, the beautiful landscape that we have in Southern West Virginia, and just, getting to know the great communities and things like that. So it's been a really great experience, and I'm really thankful that volunteering has kind of led me to this place physically and otherwise kind of in life.
It sounds like you have a dream job, India, and I love what you all are doing down there.
Thank you.
India, are there any final shots or any final thoughts that you would like to share? And then how can someone get involved if they'd like to volunteer with Southern Active West Virginia?
Yeah, so really just the last thing I want to say is, like I said, all those volunteer opportunities I went through, we're definitely always looking for volunteers in those capacities and other things. Anything anybody's interested in, we kind of make it work. So ways to get involved. You can see my email and phone number on the screen there, as well as our website. We also have a Facebook page, which you can just find by searching Active Southern West Virginia. Within there, we have a group, Active Southern West Virginia Bulletin Board, which kind of, people post different things that are going on, different activities. So it's more about smaller community, to just kind of conversations about activities we have going on. And also our newsletter, you can subscribe to that on our website. But if you have any direct questions, feel free to email me, and I can connect you to the person who, might be best able to answer that, whether it's me or somebody else. So yeah, always happy to have people reach out, and excited to, have some new volunteers hop on board.
Thank you, India, and congratulations on finding your dream job through AmeriCorps. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So that was a really awesome conversation with 3 great organizations that you can volunteer with. I know I really enjoyed myself. And if you're looking for more volunteer opportunities, or if you have a volunteer opportunity to share, you can visit our website, volunteerwb.gov, and we have a matching system. So we have volunteer opportunities, and we're always looking for new volunteer opportunities. So be sure you sign on to our website and register today. So just to close us out, be sure to take the feedback survey. Christina's been doing a great job pasting the link in the chat box, and register for our upcoming webinars. You're not going to want to miss the grant writing training. It's going to be really good with Alice Runke from the Grant Advantage. And I wanted to thank our all-star volunteers again. I believe they were all on the line today. So I want to thank Marilyn, Joseph, and Jennifer. And if you haven't gotten a chance, you can thank them in the chat for being such wonderful examples of volunteerism in the state. And I want to thank our panelists for being so kind and dedicated, Jennifer with Faith in Action, Kathy with Boad, and India from Active Southern West Virginia. So I thought this was a really cool topic, and I'm glad you all joined us today. Christina, do you have any thoughts you want to share before we sign off?
I don't. Thank you all for, I guess I do. I always say I don't, and then I find words that I want to say. I do. I want to say thank you. This is a highlight of the month for Dana and I to get to connect with people across the state who have similar values that we do, that see why volunteering is so important, that understand, this collective desire to build a better West Virginia through service. So thank you guys for being here, and I hope that we'll see you in May.
Yeah, we'll see you all in May, and thanks for all your nice messages in the chat box. We appreciate y'all.
See everybody later. Don't forget to take the survey.